Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Tar Heel Illustrated.com, or if you're watching on our YouTube channel, Tar Heel Illustrated. I'm THI staff writer Jacob Turner, and joining me, as he always does, THI publisher Andrew Jones. And Andrew, starting an exciting series today. This is the first ever episode of our Tape Talk series. I'm going to give a little quick background on it, and then we'll dive into it as we always do. So recently, I should say, we were able to go to a open Carolina football practice during one of its spring practices. I believe it was the third one of the season in Kenan Stadium. We're able to do a lot of photo and capture a lot of video from that. And in this series, we're going to kind of be running through different position groups, discussing some footage and just talking about those position groups and kind of breaking them down and how we think they're going to work out. So starting today, as you could tell from the title, with the quarterbacks. And AJ, let's dive into it as we always do, man. I can't even say I know we have to start with Sam Howell. I think a lot of people considering him a legitimate Heisman Trophy candidate going into the 2021 season. I know that's something that the Carolina football program is also pushing really, really hard. And when you look at his stats over the past couple of years, it's hard to argue with it. Just been a phenomenal quarterback for the Tar Heels. And, let's kind of talk about him first and kind of we're not going to spend too much time on him because I think he kind of speaks for himself, but just your kind of overall thoughts on Hal and kind of what he has to, the steps he needs to take going into this season. Cause I think the expectations are even higher than they have been over the past couple seasons for him.
Yeah, and before I do that, very quickly, just so people understand, we're only allowed to show a maximum of 2.5 minutes.
Yeah, 2.5 minutes.
Practice footage a day, new footage a day. So these videos will have about 2.5 minutes of footage in them, and then, but we'll kind of space it out as you'll probably could see, because Jacob is the master at that stuff.
I try.
I'm totally incapable of doing those things myself. Yeah, Sam is Sam. Mm-hmm. Sam's going to look really good. I think Sam sets a standard in that room, and it was pretty interesting just to see him go through. Here's a guy who has thrown for 7,000 yards, and he's going to set all kinds of records. He's going to start the season, if not as the leading candidate for the Heisman, one of the top three. And the team has very, very high goals. They're going to start in the top 10. So he's going to get as much preseason attention as any Carolina football player, perhaps even in my lifetime.
Yeah.
And that's kind of interesting. But watching him on the third practice of spring, the first day in Shells, every rep he took very seriously.
Yeah.
So when Jacoby Criswell and when Drake May and when Jefferson Boaz take their reps, well, if this ballyhooed stat sheet stuffing future first round NFL pick is taking every one of these reps seriously, well, I think I need to as well. And that's what I like about where this program is. We talked about it in the podcast we did the other day. The standard has been fully embraced, and guys that aren't at the standard, they're trying to reach up to that standard. The ones that are there, they're trying to raise the bar and standard a little bit more. And I think that's probably the best way to sum up Sam Howell. He does everything very well. Some things he does extremely well. And we know that he's working on a few things this spring, and he will work on it, when they do OTAs and stuff afterward, throwing laterally, getting rid of the ball, not taking sacks, not holding the ball so long, that kind of stuff. And we saw a little bit of that the other day. But more than anything, Jacob, he sets a standard. And it's always neat to see when guys are really, really, really good and they don't lay back. They're always going at stuff 100% because that's part of what makes them great.
Agreed. Yeah. Impressive. Sam Howell's kind of always been impressive since we've been able to see him since his freshman season. He kind of always has carried that very serious demeanor in practice, at least the open practices, the few ones that we have been to, and you kind of see it before games when he's warming up as well. He's very stoic. You can see it during his press conferences. You kind of get what you get with Sam Howell, and you kind of getting that vibe with Sam Howell at practice, last week as well. So yeah,
there's a coolness to him.
Yeah, that's a good word for it. That's the word
I like to call. There's two kinds of cool guy syndrome, especially in that age group. There's the guy that tries to be really cool. Mm-hmm. And every time he looks in the mirror, he's not sure if he's satisfied that mission.
But he wants to be, yeah.
But he wants to be. Okay? And then there's the guy that's like, yeah, I'm like the Fonz, from Happy Days. I'm dating myself again. But, you just tweak the hair a little bit. You're like, yeah, I'm good. Mm-hmm. That's Sam. And I say this from a football perspective and from an everything perspective. He's better with us in the media now. Mm-hmm. He was young 2 years ago, didn't say as much. He doesn't say a ton now. But his answers are more thorough. They're more thought out. He's more experienced doing that. He's obviously had a lot of opportunities to field questions from us, both in person at a podium or right outside of practice or through Zoom. So he's had a lot of different experiences there. And you could see those parts of his personality coming out a little bit. He's not a rah-rah guy. He's not going to run around smacking everybody on the fanny. He's not going to taunt the other team. We talked about moxie in our podcast after the practice on Saturday. And there is such thing as a quiet moxie. And that's the coolness of Sam. There's a quiet moxie there. And I think I'd rather have that in my quarterback room than a screamer, yeller, or jump up and down guy. Of course, if it's natural and works for a dude, you let it go. But I like how Sam carries himself, and I like how that room just kind of falling. He's the mother hen, and the little hens are kind of behind him, following along. But they kind of fit the script a little bit too, it looks like. Although they may have different personalities, but they get it. And I think they're learning every time they watch Sam take a rep.
Exactly. Good stuff, AJ. Let's move on to kind of the backup quarterback spot, if you will. Talk about the other three guys. Jacoby Criswell, freshman last season, got a little bit of playing time and some mop-up minutes for the Tar Heels as a true freshman. Drake May, an incoming true freshman, early enrollee who was out there as well. I thought he looked good. A little bit smaller than, once you see him against these college kids. I remember seeing him in high school and seeing him at a couple games. I think he was at the Notre Dame or Wake Forest game last year and seeing him. I was like, man, it's a big kid. And you see him out there on Saturday, you're like, no, he's not really that big, actually. And then Jefferson Boaz will kind of loop him in there as well. Another guy that came in as a true freshman.
Talented kid.
Yeah, really, really. I mean, just a super tall kid, really good quarterback his last couple years in high school. I know he's a guy that kind of played all over the field for East Surrey up there, but really showed well. And my dad always tells me this, shout out to my dad for this, but he always he watched him in the state championship game his senior year and said he was fantastic looking. I think it was over at Wallace Wade Stadium in Duke, and said he had a really, really good game in that one. But let's kind of talk about Criswell and May first, and then we can kind of add Boaz in there as well. Mac Brown said during the press conferences that we've talked to him during the spring that backup quarterback position is wide open. So, I think he's still looking to see who that guy is going to be. Criswell's obviously got the experience. It's funny. I saw him, and I don't know if I got this on video. I don't think I did, but if I did, I'll throw it in here. I saw him and Sam Howell kind of standing side by side. And I think Criswell was maybe an inch or so taller than Howell, but just their body structure and how they're built, extremely similar. Not the tallest of guys, but very similar body structure. And you kind of see why they got a guy like him, super talented. And like I said, he almost kind of looks like Sam Howell in terms of what he's built like. And then looping Drake May in there as well. I think he's a guy that comes in with a ton of expectations as a true freshman and is a guy that I think down the line, at least a lot of Carolina fans think may be the number one. But how do you see that kind of backup quarterback position, and what were your kind of thoughts of seeing them on last weekend? Because I thought, those two guys in particular and Boaz, I think they all look pretty solid out there. And Drake May maybe a little bit of a learning curve, which you expect from a true freshman, but from the reps I did see him, I saw him do some nice things as well.
Yeah, a ton of expectations with Drake, and he's got time to just kind of get himself right. He didn't have to meet those expectations right now, which is good for him. I did think that he looked like he's going to have to hit the weight room a little bit.
Yeah, it was crazy because I thought he was bigger than that, but compared to those kids, he's
and no doubt, and that's just he was in his third practice when we saw him. He's only been in practice for a few months, and so give him time. When we go to practice, we're going to go to a practice, I'm sure, in very early August, maybe the first practice. It's going to look different. What you should do is take your film and put that Saturday up against whatever it is we're in there in August, and you'll see a noticeable difference there. I really like Criswell. I think, everybody's just assuming Drake May is the next starting quarterback. I wouldn't throw Criswell out yet. He's a very talented kid. We saw him at Mac's Showtime camp, the final highlight, the headline star-studded camp that concluded the June camp series 2 years ago. He was really impressive. He was impressive from a physical standpoint, but remember what I just said about Sam, that quiet confidence? I like that in the quarterback room. Well, if it's natural for a guy to yell, if it's natural for a guy to be vocal, if it's natural for a guy to pound the chest a little bit, that's okay as long as it's natural. I don't want to see forced stuff, right?
Yeah.
Criswell's got a little bit more of the animation. And we saw that at that camp. It really, really was impressive what kind of leader he was, not just with the quarterbacks at that camp, but everybody that was there. He was at times the loudest guy, but in a good way. There's bad loud and there's good loud, and he was a good loud. So, and watching him Saturday, it was interesting to see him kind of follow behind Sam, but he looked really good. He looked like Sam, as you said, with a lot of the stuff he did from
Mm-hmm.
from the steps, the release, the tight ball. I mean, he throws a really
He
nice
does, yeah.
ball. Whether, Mac openly talks about, look, quarterbacks are going to transfer. Whether Criswell ends up being the starter at North Carolina or somewhere else, he's got the potential to be a really good quarterback. So they have a fantastic problem on their hands. It's a good problem when you have really good guys competing. And I think it's wise that they let this thing play out because Drake has to learn how to practice like a collegian. He's
Mm-hmm.
got to learn the offense. He's got to get everything down. They did the same thing with Sam 2 years ago. He was not anointed the guy right away. They didn't announce him as the starter, that he had won the job until early in the third week, I guess it was, of fall camp
Yep.
in 2019. And he had been through a spring and he had been through about a dozen or so practices in August before they finally gave him that nod. So Max said the other day, it's probably going to be August when they decide on who the number 2 quarterback is going to be. It's going to be between Criswell and May. May's going to get time. He's going to get a fair shot. He's going to come back in August, a little bit different body, a little bit more capable of handling what could come his way if he was inserted as the starter, if something happened to Sam. So they're in good shape with one of those 2 options, Jacob.
Yeah.
They're both really talented kids. They both carry themselves like quarterbacks. They both have command of what they're doing. And for Drake, it'll be more so as he gets more experience and a little bit more confident. When you've got a guy like Sam in front of you.
Yeah, I was going to say, yeah. Mm-hmm.
It could help you when you're learning and watching and all that kind of stuff. But some guys might feel a little bit inhibited and not really branching out and being who they are because, well, this is Sam's room. This is Sam's position. He's the guy. I just have to sit back and wait. I can't really fully be myself. So sometimes it slows growth. I'm not saying that that's happening right now. We're not around enough to actually know whether or not it is.
Yeah,
but
definitely.
it would be human nature, whether on the football field, whether you're in a sports department at a newspaper writing, or whether you're at a radio station or in computers or whatever it is that you're doing. When you're not the guy yet, you kind of hold back a little bit. It's very natural for human beings to do that. So I would imagine there's some of that on the football field as well. But those guys are talented. They're really talented. There isn't a program in America that wouldn't be happy to have really any of these 4,
Yeah.
but certainly Criswell or May as guys battling for the backup spot.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I completely agree with what you're saying. And, just a really stacked room. I mean, you got Sam Howell up there, like you said, who's going to this season probably as a legitimate Heisman candidate. There's a lot of factors that go into it. You got to win games for that to happen. So that's kind of to be determined if that actually comes to fruition. But statistically, should be a guy. But when you got guys behind there as talented as Criswell, Drake May, and even Jefferson Boaz, a guy that was, really good quarterback in high school for a couple of years. I mean, it's like you mentioned, it's a pretty solid room right now. And I think if you're a Carolina fan, you got to be pretty happy. And if you're Mac Brown, you got to be pretty happy with what this position group is looking like right now. But AJ, I think it's a good spot to wrap this one up, man. We're going to try to keep these a little bit shorter than some of our other podcasts go, man. And I know
Let's
we
hit
get a little
Boaz.
long-winded.
Let's hit Boaz just very, very quickly.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I was talking to somebody in the media the other day about Boaz. They didn't see him, but they saw him in high school, and we were talking about it around the ACC. And this is not a stretch, but I bet you there are certain programs in this league. If Boaz was on that roster, he would get a legitimate shot to start.
Oh, no doubt.
I think he's really talented. And they have a ton of tight ends. And by the way, at that Showtime camp, he was a tight end, and he was the most impressive guy at the camp.
Oh, wow.
I just remember Desmond Evans was there. There were a lot of guys that were there. Downs was there. Boaz to me was the most impressive guy, maybe because I didn't know what my expectations were, and he really kind of blew whatever that was.
Another basketball player, right, in high school?
And a baseball player. But as your 4th quarterback,
it's not bad.
Find me, and I know this is kind of a weird thing to say. Find me a better 4th quarterback.
Honestly, I don't think you can. I mean, and he's huge too. What is he? 6? I want to get this wrong. 6'5", 6'6", 6'7".
Well, let's remember, quarterbacks get hurt sometimes. No matter how great they are, they get hurt. We covered the 2018 Tar Heels, and they had 4 different quarterbacks that played that year.
Yeah.
So if he's your 4th guy, if it ever gets down to that, they're in pretty good shape, all things considered.
Yeah, I think you'd be feeling pretty confident with Boaz out there. But yeah, good stuff, AJ. Good place to wrap that one up. Talking about the quarterback position in our first episode of our Tape Talk series. So keep checking back to our YouTube channel and TarHeelIllustrated.com as we're going to continue rolling these out for the various other position groups on offense and defense over the next couple of weeks. I've been Jacob Turner. He's been Andrew Jones. If you enjoyed the video, if you're excited for this quarterback room, go ahead and give this video a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel, and we'll see you in the next one. Thanks, guys.
Thanks.